Good morning. Today is the 1st of June, 2024. I am welcoming you to Sunrise, and my name is Alero Edu.
Well, I'm Akine. Good morning and welcome. And I cannot bring myself to say Happy New Month, because I don't know what it means.
I don't know what it means either. But it seems to have entered Nigerian
lingo
somehow.
So,
Happy New Month. What is that?
Or simply because you say
Where
Happy
else
New Year.
have you heard anybody greet anybody Happy New Month?
So I still can't bring myself. When I hear Happy New Year, did I say the same to you?
Yeah. This matter of the comeback national anthem. It was talking point in the course of the week, and I belong to one WhatsApp forum, and the general feeling was, oh, this must be a distraction. I mean, in all that is happening to us in this country, cost of fuel, cost of food items, this, that, everything's gone up. People can't feed. Labor is threatening to start a strike on Monday. And we're talking about an anthem that we killed 40, how many years ago, that we have brought back now. Is that going to bring down the price of fuel, bring down the price of electricity, bring down the suffering of Nigerians? Is it?
Well, if you ask me,
now who I go ask?
I think
my take in all of this is our leaders should first of all live the anthem, whether it is the old one or the new one, or whichever one is the old one and whichever one is the new one. They should live it first and not just sing it.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Quite a number of people who used that old, now new national anthem are very euphoric. They are excited about the fact that, it's now the national anthem. For them, for many people, the issue is a question of timing. Like, now waiting remember that.
Now waiting we need now be that.
But at the end of the day, the truth still remains that we can't really know what is on the mind of anyone who is doing anything. If only we could take a video camera and shove it right through their minds to know exactly what's going on, we probably might. But it is what it is. And you know what's also interesting, Alero? I just happened on the website of the National Assembly, nas.gov.ng. I saw an information, and I wanted to confirm that the National Assembly had anything like that. And I checked, and I didn't find it. However, I found so many other bills that are being considered. Guess what? 200 million Nigerians minus almost 500 are aware.
Are aware?
The people in the National Assembly who are working on the bill. They are aware of several bills. Those that went through, those that didn't go through, they are aware. But most Nigerians are not aware, and guess what? Those laws will bind us, whether we are aware or not. So if you ask me, I'd say, let's focus on the things that are even affecting us now that we may not even be aware of.
And like many have also said, this matter of the national anthem, it went through so fast. Were there any town hall meetings? Did our reps come to our constituents to discuss, constituencies to discuss those things with us?
I don't know whether.
And what did we say?
I don't know whether it went through all the ropes, but I think it went through some. That's why Michael Zechome, High Chief Michael Zechome could say, look, I raised this thing in 2014, 10 years down the line, you guys are talking about it again, and I think I would support it. He has spoken to that very, very recently. So he's not in the National Assembly, so it must have gone through some kind of speaking, whatever. The challenge for many Nigerians is not whether or not it's a good one. Yeah. The challenge is that of timing. And one of the things that came to me is, hey, when you take this difficult decision, when is a good time to take it?
But if you didn't take it before, I think the next best time is
now, unfortunately.
yes. And people are saying that they're not seeing that the government is doing anything to bring down food inflation, especially. Inflation, yes, was it 33% the last time we spoke about it? They're not doing anything about bringing all that down. They're not doing anything about cutting down the cost of governance. We still see governors in convoys of 40 black jeeps in a country where people can't even afford to eat. Titus is the fish, well, they used to say it was the fish of the poor people. But Titus is now 4,700 naira per kilo. That is 2 fish will cost you 4,700 naira. And our leaders are driving around in convoys of 40 black jeeps. Don't they have any conscience? Do they want people to start stoning them on the streets before they do something about this poverty in the land, this hunger?
Those are very strong thoughts that you've expressed.
Tomato, 3 pieces for 500 naira. That is if you find it. Pepper, like 5 pieces for 1,500 naira. So what are people eating? And the same people want to go out on a strike on Monday. Where are they going to get the food that will give them the energy to go on strike?
I think, it's part of the whole, if you ask me, it's part of the whole. The far-reaching thinking that we need to put into the things that we talk about. I mean, you're talking about the strike, which is leading us into that I see in that is that nationalism. Most of the time, and I say this thing all the time, Alero, most of the time when we're talking about Nigeria's issues, we're talking about 2 things. Number one, we're talking about the presidency. We're talking about the federal government. Even sometimes I hear members of the National Assembly talking about the federal government. Hey,
they are part of it.
Y'all are part of the federal government.
They're all part of
it. And so that is right there. So on the one hand, we're looking in one direction. No, we should be looking in 37 directions.
When I spoke about reducing the cost of governance, I said governors are going around in 40 vehicle convoys.
But you are one of the few who do that. A whole load of people always
looking at the presidency.
To the federal government one, and mostly led by politicians. And guess what? We're such a horde. We all follow. And what does that do? It takes the attention away from the people whose actions affect us directly. Right there. I mean, what's the distance between Abuja and Sokoto? The distance between Abuja and Lagos. But what is the distance between Sokoto and the capital city in the state? What's the distance between Ikeja and Alimosho compared to Abuja? And cascade it all through all the states in the country. That's on the one hand. So people, we look in that direction. We look in the direction of the presidency. Number 2, shouldn't we also be looking at ourselves, our neighbors, the things that some of these people do? Labor. Okay, the second thing I want to talk about on that one is when we talk about minimum wage, cost of living in Lagos. Is it anywhere close to the cost of living in Sokoto? I go back to Sokoto again. Because at the last count, that's the state with the highest number of multidimensionally poor people in Nigeria. So what's the cost of living in Nigeria compared to the cost of living in Sokoto? In Borno,
in Lagos.
In Bauchi, in, here and there, everywhere.
Yeah.
What's the cost of living compared to, and so let's say, for instance, you pay someone a minimum wage, let's just say, a minimum wage of 150,000 naira in Lagos. Let's assume that the person can at least eke a living from it. Will that not be what they call armed robber salary in Sokoto? I'm just saying, maybe this is just me thinking.
Because cost of living is relatively low.
Relatively low there. Yeah. So I'm hoping that these conversations will also happen across board. The third thing that I'd like to talk about when we talk about this minimum wage thing is, since when did labor think about the fact that, okay, we're asking for minimum wage, but what is the productivity level of the workforce that we are campaigning for?
Sure.
Because it's only, in my opinion, I'm not in labor movement, I'm not in any corporate organization, I don't have any employees, but I'm just thinking, if we look in that direction, maybe we can begin to say, okay, labor, help us talk to your staff or to your members of your organization. That, you know, you need to be a lot more productive so that we can be able to pay more and all of those things. Well, the objection that labor raised when I put this question forward, I think to the president of the NLC is, look, each organization have different KPIs for their staff. I agree. But the economy is, quote unquote, tanking, simply not just because the federal government is not doing, because the federal government has their own work cut out for them, but the economies of the individual organizations depends on the workforce, in my opinion. Again, I'm not an employee, I'm not even an economist. What do I know? Let me use the line Ali Baba uses. I'm just a bloody presenter. What do I do?
Yes, and just before we go to the menu, another multinational is leaving Nigeria.
Okay, well.
Kimberly Clark is leaving. Makers of Huggies, they're going away.
Oh, my.
And these are all things that we should all be looking at. More and more companies are packing their load and leaving Nigeria, and yet our president says he's looking for FDIs. Anybody who is going to consider coming to Nigeria is going to know why all those who were here are leaving.
Well, we're going to talk about that. I think that's already listed. I think that will be the third conversation today when we're talking about labor and the minimum wage. But the first one is what?
Local government autonomy. Oh, that was a big one too. Well, that has been a big one for a few weeks now since the federal government went to the Supreme Court about it.
You have to be clear.
Supreme Court.
And then we'll be talking about the CBN Act 2007, matters arising. Some people are thinking about doing some tinkering.
What he spoke about earlier, Labour calls for another strike action starting Monday.
And then I hear someone says, who strike EP? We'll find out. Lifestyle, benefits of donating blood. And don't you dare tell me that you will never chop.
There's that, huh? And then we shall close, as usual, with the Artist of the Week segment.
What's that?
He or she or it?
Shim.
Okay.
We'll find out.
All right, then. So grab your cocoa.
Or cocoa.
And spend the next 3 hours odd with us on Sunrise. See you in just a moment.
Some are advocating for that to be a national anthem.
I was just about to say that. So why wasn't that song in contention?
Well, I don't think there was a bill to be.
All right, then. Now let's get the program on the road. The Supreme Court has ordered Nigeria's 36 state governors to file their respective defense to a suit instituted against them by the federal government seeking full autonomy of local governments in the country. Just a bit of context to this. There are 774 local governments in Nigeria, but the administration has been stifled by the influence of the state governors. The Office of the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice has instituted a suit in the Supreme Court seeking an order to better guarantee the independence of the local governments. I thought that something was in the Constitution that referred to this.
The local government, yeah, of course. Excuse
Section 7.
Section 7 of the of the Constitution says the system of local government by democratically elected local government councils is under this Constitution guaranteed, and accordingly, the government of every state shall, subject to Section 8 of this Constitution, ensure their existence under a law which provides for their establishment, structure, composition, finance, and functions of such councils.
So what gives these governors the power to dissolve them and not have local government councils in place? This and many more questions we shall ask our panel this morning, and that panel is made up of Honorable Salman Idris, Deputy Chairman, House Committee on Greek Institutions and Colleges of the 10th Assembly. He joins us from our studio in Abuja. Good morning.
Good morning.
Then our two other guests join us virtually. Emeka Nwobi, Majority Leader, Delta State House of Assembly. Good morning.
Good morning and happy New Month.
And we also have a social commentator, Joyce Daniels. Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. Glad to be here.
Okay. Well, let me start with you, Honorable Idris. We just read out the section of the Constitution that guarantees the existence of the local government level, the third tier of government. How is it that the governors are getting away with stifling that tier of government?
Nigerians. Well, this issue, when you look at the provision of the Constitution, ordinarily shouldn't have been a controversial thing as it's seeming today. It's expressly guaranteed in the Constitution, the independence itself of the local government, the autonomy of the local government. But over time, it is noteworthy at this point to know, just we are rightly asserted before now, the state governors, I won't say they are the problems of the local government, but the state governors still have some level of control over the finances of the local government, as also enshrined in the Constitution, by virtue of the fact that they operate a joint account. And because they operate a joint account and every money, every funds, every revenue that is supposed to be accruing to the local government goes through them, what is called the joint account. And because of this peculiarity, it became very easy for the state governors to take advantage of this and, of course, take over the operations of the local government and politically, administratively, and, of course, fiscally. And as I speak to you, the conditions of the local government, it has become so terrible. Local government has degenerated because we don't have clear-cut governance. You can imagine, because of this joint accounting that I have spoken earlier on, they appoint local government caretaker, some call it administrators, some call it LOs, some call it supervisors, but they give it all forms of meaning. You find out a governor can last in office for 8 years, 6, 7 years, he won't conduct election, and at the twilight of his administration, he begins to conduct election, of course, because he's leaving. Honestly, I quite agree with you. It has become a national discourse. And of course, the House of Representatives, the 10th Assembly presently, is also taking a critical look at this particular aspect of our governance. Because when you're talking about local government administration, it is actually the first line of charge. It is actually the first line of governance architecture in Nigeria. And of course, I agree with you. It is something that we need to take a look at, and we are doing just that right now.
Well, you know, it's interesting that, I mean, you talk about it that way, especially because from my understanding, and it's one of the issues, the way I always bring up this matter, every one of us in Nigeria is from one local government or the other. But then let me come to you, Honorable Nwobi. There is this belief in some quarters. We hosted a legal practitioner once who said that what the law says, what the Constitution says in Section 7, is that the local government system is guaranteed, but it doesn't spell out the existence of the local government, the way it spells out the president, the role of the president and the role of the governor. It spells out that there shall be a governor, there shall be a president. But in this particular section, Section 7 of the Constitution, as amended, there is no clear statement that says there shall be a chairman of a local government. Maybe in the fourth schedule, or in the schedule that talks about it later on in the Constitution. But how does that argument come to you? for those who are saying, who are looking at that as a lapse or a loop that they can take advantage of?
Very unambiguous. It is stated very explicitly that that section of the Constitution guarantees a democratically elected local government council. And now let me draw your attention to something that I need all Nigerians to know. We are all guided by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as altered. Now, if you go to section 14.2a of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, it states very clearly that sovereignty belongs to the Nigerian people, from whom, through the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, government derives its powers and authority. What does this mean? It means that for anyone to govern you, you must have the mandate of the people. That is what exactly this section of the Constitution is talking about. It therefore means that if any state, any governor introduces a transition committee, you are denying the people of their right to elect, to determine who governs them at that level. So it is a clear contravention of the Constitution. It's a very clear contravention of the Constitution. Even Section 13, under fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy, Section 13 also states very clearly that any person in authority must conform to and observe this section of the Constitution. It is a clear, this is stated in the Constitution. The Constitution states very clearly that wherever you find yourself, in any power, in any authority, whoever you are, you must conform and observe this section of the Constitution. So anything outside that is a flagrant disobedience or contravention of the Constitution. And I can tell you, we had a national discourse last week in Abuja, and I heard that a particular state in Nigeria, for 18 good years, has been running the local government council through transition committee. That is a clear violation of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as altered. So we must, I am happy I'm from Delta State. I'm happy one of the discussants that day read out the states who supported the local government autonomy in the last constitutional review. And Delta State was one of them. Apparently, I was still in the House. I voted for it. Delta State voted for it. But unfortunately, we could not make the 24, the needed two-thirds, a majority to get that on. But it's unfortunate to hear that in the present day Nigeria, in a democratic government, that some people still vote against such a thing. I am happy to tell Nigerians that in Delta State, just March here, 2024, the immediate past local government council's tenure expired. And on the 13th of July this year, we are conducting another election to bring in another democratically elected government at the local government council. Maybe that is because my governor is a parliamentarian and he believes in the rule of law. He doesn't believe in imposing people, on the people to rule them. He believes in following the Constitution the way it is stated explicitly. So I want to say this, that Section 7 is unambiguous. Section 7 provides and guarantees for a democratically elected local government council. There's no ambiguity to that. So there is no reason in this world why any local government council would be governed by a transition committee. If you do so, you are denying the people of their rights to determine who governs them at that level. And take note of this.
Honorable, I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
Since you are so vehement in your support for the local government councils and their powers have been usurped in various states of the country over time, why have we not heard any dissenting voices? Why have we not seen any, should I say, punishment or, what's the word I'm looking for? Any kind of repercussion for the actions of the governors who have usurped the powers of the local government?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, the Constitution did not provide for any punishment. However, as a Democrat and as true Nigerians who believe in democracy. We ought to obey the Constitution 100%. We ought to live by the provisions of the Constitution. And it is very clear, like I said, and very unambiguous. Section 7 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as altered, explicitly states that guarantees that local government, there is a local government, democratically elected local government council, and it has to be followed. And I also went further to bring in Section 14.2a, which we must understand very clearly, because that is where you tie the hands of the people. If Section 14.2a says that sovereignty belongs to the people, you are ruling the people, you are governing the people. It says sovereignty belongs to the people, from whom? Through the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Government, that now means the governor and every other person who finds himself in the position of governance.
Okay.
Derives
let me bring in Joyce Daniels now. Joyce, Honorable Nwobi has said that there have been no consequences because the Constitution does not state any. But couldn't the people themselves have taken this matter to court? Couldn't the local councils themselves have taken this matter to court, or would it have been a waste of time?
That would be the fear of the people, that their actions would be a waste of time, because many times we've heard, go to court, what actually came of it. So generally, in the place of politics and governance, people are wary of lending their voices for fear of being attacked, segregated, singled out, and the fear of not getting the results that they seek. On the other hand, a lot of people do not also know what the law provides. And if the people don't know, then what action will the people take? So it's good that conversations like this are had. Whether people will take more action, I don't know yet.
Well, you know, the challenge there, Joyce, is whether or not the people even understand the powers that good government in their environment, not even that of the councillor. So what's your take on the perception of people about the local government administrations? What's your perspective? Do people even give it any serious? Because even during elections, people hardly ever come out.
My take is that some of us should take more responsibility and have taken more responsibility to enlighten self, immediate environment, and larger environments to be more involved. I personally am I'm an advocate of being, because I think that it is also most overlooked tier, and therefore we have perhaps the least qualified set of people leading that tier of government. So my other concern would be with the autonomy well executed and all the powers given to the local governments to run as they should. We have the most competent people running this tier of government. That will be my next concern. So my answer is organizations, CSOs, schools like the School of Politics and Governance, organizations like Fix Politics and more are intentionally ensuring that more citizens, more enlightened citizens, understand what's at stake if we don't know, or if we don't get more involved in how our affairs are run at the local government. Okay,
let me take it back to you, Honorable Idris, and I'll look at the Constitution. I'm looking at Section 5 of the Constitution now, which talks about executive powers. Section 5 begins by saying, subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the executive powers of the Federation, 1A, shall be vested in the President. You go to sub 2, says by the provisions of this Constitution, the executive powers of a state shall be vested in the governor. And that's it. Notwithstanding the provisions, nothing really is said about the authority that's subject to the provisions of this Constitution. The powers of a local government shall be vested in the chairman of the local government. It doesn't say that in the Constitution. So couldn't that be a loop that some people are also looking at?
Yes, the Constitution, we can't have a very perfect document at every point in time. When it constitutional matters, when during the course of administration of the Constitution, when we find such lacunas, as we have rightly been discussing, of course, we come up for amendments. Because if you look at this issue is coming up because of the non-performance of this local government, almost non-existence of democratically elected people who are to lead this local government, which of course over time the governors have taken advantage of. The Constitution is very clear about this matter, that there shall be a local government system. It's a third tier of government. And of course, it's the municipal government. It is the government that deals with the lowest of the society, municipal problem, municipal issues, drainages. Those are the things this government is supposed to be. Now, there's something you just said now that a lot of people don't even know their chairman's houses. No, far from that. We all know. All of us are from one local government or the other. We know our councillors, we know everybody. The problem there is, do they have this independence by the way, when a man is not elected ab initio, you are just appointed, it limits how much you could cry out when you yourself are not functioning. And as such, hence we have seen these lacunas that has not worked over time, because you have a constitution and you're administering, you're moving forward, and you find out that you're not achieving the desired result. And of course, that has provoked a national discourse, which all of us are talking about now. And I think everyone is conscious about it. And one thing is guaranteed now, virtually all of us want this local government autonomy. And I've told you this autonomy is administrative, is fiscal. And we must begin to look at the Constitution more closely. And of course, that is the more reason why you find out that the Attorney General of the Federation is also suing the 36 states governors through their Attorney General. It has become a national issue, it has become a national endemic, and we must be alive to it. Of course, the National Assembly held a discourse just about a week ago on this same subject matter, and it is about bringing people together. Let's have a discussion on this situation. And of course, we have various recommendations as to how to go about it, by constitutional amendment, by also engagement. Because there's an issue I'm going to tell you today, my brother. The people who have governed the states before, a lot of them today are senators. Some are even presidents today. Some are vice presidents today. And if you look at the leadership of the country itself, the president, the vice president, the Senate president, the SGF, they've all been governors at a point in time of their life. And as such, they know the nitty-gritty. They are also coped. They are also facing these challenges. Because the moment the local government system does not work, the moment there's no administration in this tier of government, honestly, it puts pressure on everyone at whatever level. So whatever lacuna that we have seen in the Constitution, it is for us to use the very constitutional means at resolving this lacuna by means of amendment. But of course, the 7th Assembly, 8th Assembly, 9th Assembly have made several attempts to guarantee this autonomy constitutionally. But the problem we have is, after going around, we must seek concurrence from the State House of Assembly. And as the earlier speaker rightly said, we could not secure the 24 states. What I did, the nearest we got, I think, was 20 states. And of course, we will not give up. It's an improvement. Of course, the democracy itself is evolving, and we'll continue to work on that. And I believe we are going for, definitely, these are all discussions that are going to lead to another, of course, constitutional review. And you see, when the local government system does not work, it also breeds insecurity. And these are the national challenges that we have at the moment. So local government autonomy, I can assure you, no going back on that. And we'll begin to, if we can't even get it holistically, I could assure you, when we begin to look at the Constitution and check it itself, during the national discourse, this issue came up of Section 162, subsection 5, which, of course, tells us how monies gets to the local government. And it tells about the powers of the National Assembly in administering these funds that goes to the local government. So for sure, it's a process. And of course, I can assure you that we're in that process.
One of the grounds for this suit by the Attorney General and Minister of Justice is this, and I quote, that all efforts to make the governors comply with the dictates of the 1999 Constitution in terms of putting in place a democratically elected local government system has not yielded any result, and that to continue to disburse funds from the federal account to governors for non-existing democratically elected local government is to undermine the sanctity of the 1999 Constitution. End of quote. What are your thoughts about that?
I agree totally with the Attorney General in that regard. But these things have to be done constitutionally, and I think that is what the Attorney General is trying to evoke by approaching the Supreme Court for proper interpretation and, of course, subsequent injunction. And I believe it's clear, the Constitution is clear. That one does not even require any amendment. What he's just seeking is interpretation. And of course, once we get that, we will now know that we can no longer disburse funds to any government that is not democratically elected, that do not have the mandate of the people. And of course, once you have the mandate of the people as a chairman of the local government, it's clear again, the Constitution has stated it clearly, how money should get to you. It's very unfortunate, my dear brother. The funds getting to the local government, it's rooted through the state, and I think that is one of the lacunas in the Constitution. The Constitution clearly states how the money for the state goes to the state, but the Constitution stated clearly again, funds for local government shall go through the state government. And I think the reason for this is because that's created for a joint account for them. The reason for this is because that the state government are also expected to also, there's a percentage of the revenue accruing to the state that should also go to the local government. But you see, the local government, the state governors are quick to adhere to the part of the Constitution that allow them to set up joint accounts. But they have this lackluster attitude when it comes to conducting election to also have the right man to receive the funds there. So for me, I stand by, once you don't have the mandate of the people, the federal government has no business in distributing funds, taking funds to that particular local government. We've had this issue, it has come up severally. And I must even bring our mind to it. When the president, our presidency today, when he was governor in Lagos State, we had the same issue with Obasanjo, when, of course, LCDs were created in Lagos. Whether we like it or not, you're creating LCD, the only instrument the only thing that permits us to create local government in the country, again, is the Constitution, and that power is vested in the National Assembly. So as such, the head of state then withheld funds. So, and I think we could still do that again. Once you don't have a democratically elected chairman in place, we will withhold their funds. Of course, the National Assembly to play in all this by virtue of section 162, subsection 5, as I earlier mentioned.
Well, thank you, Honorable. I think it is actually understandable that, that issue should even be coming up now. But Honorable Nwobi, even though that initial question was for you, you may want to speak to it as well, but the question that I'd like to ask you is, why has it taken the Houses of Assembly so long? I remember, joining a team of civil society organizations representing my media organization at the time. And we took a tour of the southwest of Nigeria, for instance. The objective was to sensitize them, to conscientize them, and educate them about the need for them to sign on, to approve, to support the autonomy, administrative and financial autonomy of the local governments in their states. I can tell you that not all Southwest states at the time opened their arms to it. So here we are now, again, Honorable. What is it that we need to tell, or the State Houses of Assembly need to know, so that they can do the needful this time around?
Well, I think it's just a problem of attitude. It's an attitudinal problem. Like I said before, I was in the House. I am still in the House. I was in the House when you did that tour. And we completely aligned with that school of thought that there should be, local government financial autonomy. And like I did say, during that constitutional review, Delta State voted for that financial autonomy. So we believe in Delta State that there should be local government financial autonomy. I wouldn't know what the problem is with those other states who didn't vote or those other states who voted against. But anybody who believes in democracy, anybody who understands the Section 7 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as altered, should give a nod, should support local government financial autonomy. Because this is the tier of government that is the closest to the people. Again, let me remind us, the same Constitution, Section 14(2)(b), provides that the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. How will this tier of government be able to provide welfare and security to the people that they govern if they are not autonomous, if they don't have adequate funding? So it is important to open the eyes of our people to understand the need for this financial autonomy that we are preaching. I am happy that about 16 states voted for it in the last constitutional review, but we need to call on those other states who do not understand that they should support this. It is for the welfare of the people. It is for the good of the people. If these people have enough funds, like I said in the national discourse, that I believe that there are two major issues, militating or inhibiting effective governance at the local government level. Those two issues are inadequate funding and the political will. So what we're discussing now, the aspect we're discussing now is about the political will. The people in authority, they need to have that political will to support this financial autonomy at the local government level, so that the people at the local level will be able to enjoy government, will be able to benefit from the democracy that we find ourselves in Nigeria. I do not know the reason why those states who voted against did, but it's unimaginable to me. I don't understand why they should do that. But I am calling on all Nigerians to please give a nod to that financial autonomy. And of course, look into the funding of the local government council. Because you cannot put something on nothing. For the local government council to be effective, there must be adequate funding. And it is on that note that I did say in the national discourse that I believe we need to also revisit the sharing formula, in fact, where the federal government receives 52% and the state 26% and then local government 20%. I also believe it's not equitable. They have to revisit it so that both the state and local government should have adequate funding to provide the necessary infrastructure and other amenities that the people at the local level need. So that is my take on this. Okay. But I am happy to always say and announce to Nigerians that Delta State is a proponent of local government financial autonomy. Oh, okay. We have supported it before. We will continue to support it. And I call on other states to follow suit, so that we'll be able to create a Nigeria that will provide for the needs of the people at the local level. Okay.
Joyce, it seems that the governors have shackled the local government and, by extension, the head, who is the chairman of the local government council. And that seems to be the case because the chairman is there at the behest of the governor. So what we should be advocating now is a way for us to have proper local government elections, so that the people who actually end up being the heads of those local governments are the people elected by the people, not somebody who is selected by the governor and therefore is beholden to the governor. So how do we achieve this free and fair election, which will throw up a chairman elected by the people who will then see the people as his priority.
That's what I said before.
Joyce Daniel, please. Our question is for Joyce. Thank you.
Okay.
One major way would be to take away the state electoral commissions and let INEC be the one to conduct the local government elections, because the concern is if the state independent electoral commissions that are put together, as it were, by the state government are running affairs, the situation will keep going on and on and on. So when INEC takes over, it opens up the space just a little bit. I will put in a caveat, though, that for many local governments, and perhaps I should speak for mine, the people are involved in the process, right? It's usually will come back to what people want. Many times the people will have a voice and say, we may not want this person, we may not want this person for these reasons. It's not 100% guaranteed that the governors can always muzzle their ways through, even though most of the time that's what happens. So change that, when we have that freeing up of who conducts the elections, would have more chances of people that are not tied to the governor of the day.
I have one question for you, Honorable Idris. I just searched through the Constitution. And, you know, with technology, you can search much easier. So I searched for the word chairman in the Constitution. I have 72 results. The only place where the chairmanship of a local government shows up in any semblance is Section 225, where it talks about chairmanship or councillorship. And that is for any for the registration of political parties, for any political party that does not win an election at the chairmanship level. But guess what? In the entire Constitution, there is no role of chairman of local government. Even in section, in the seventh, in the part, is it part 7 or the seventh schedule that talks about the functions of a local government, there is no office of chairmanship of a local government. We have chairman of INEC, chairman of state houses of state commissions, all kinds of chairmen, 72 such results from the search, but no office of chairman of a local government, no office of councillor of a local government, except in section 225, where it talks about deregistration of a political party. Isn't that enough ground for any, governor to say the Constitution doesn't recognize?
You don't exist.
Thank you very much. That is, to that extent, part of the deficiency of the Constitution. But the Constitution recognizes that there will be a third tier of government. The lacuna there now is not specifying, not mentioning it expressly as to who administers that local government.
Yeah.
And that is what we're saying. Those are the lacunas that gives the state governors the opportunities to take advantage of the people.
Support this.
However, that is not
just
to
a second.
say
Just
that
a second, Honorable. Support that. Just 1 second. My apologies. Support that with what Honorable Wilby said earlier. Section 7 says there shall be a democratically elected local government council. The Constitution creates a local government council, but does not create offices.
Council
doesn't create
office
offices
of the chairman
or officers for that government.
That is why you will continue to amend the Constitution where we have such lacunas. And such lacunas come to the fore when we find out that when the performance, because these are the kind of issues that has affected the performance of the local government. I agree with you. In totality, there is a contradiction. I agree with you. Will allow it to continue because we must check when we find such contradictions. Of course, the Constitution itself allows itself to be reviewed, and that is what is calling for all the amendments, the reviews that we're talking about. For God's sake, hence the Constitution already says we shall have a democratically elected local government council. What makes up the council? To this extent, I can assure you that is where all the agitations are coming from now. Everybody is agitating, we are agitating. Even the state governors themselves are agitating. And of course, based on these agitations, that is the reason why we are going for review. We are calling for the review of the Constitution to avoid the lacuna and bring government down to the people, as also guaranteed still by the same Constitution. So for me, it is not a problem. We'll go for a review. It's not a problem.
Well, Honorable, you want to speak to the same issue. You have said it, that the Constitution is unambiguous. Well, I agree with you. Section 7 says there shall be a democratically elected local government council, but there is no office of chairman or functions of the office of the chairman of a local government, Honorable Mobi. I think you're on mute.
The same Constitution, the fourth schedule of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, has altered. Fourth schedule, explicitly states the functions of the local government. It is contained in the Constitution.
The functions of the local government is clear.
Yes.
But who are the officers that will execute that function? Is there a chairman? Is there a councillor? The roles for a chairman, the roles for a councillor in the Constitution, that's the question that I'm asking.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The Constitution also recognizes the 3 tiers of government, which is the federal, the state, and the local government. And just like you did say earlier, by implication, the chairman of the local government is in the executive. He plays the same role the governor plays at the state level, and the same role the president plays at the federal level. I agree with you to the extent that there are some, there is a lacuna, there is a kind of a deficiency in the Constitution which needs to be amended. But then, remember that I said earlier, I quoted Section 13 of the Constitution earlier, that says that every authority, every person must conform to, observe, and apply this Constitution.
Well,
so nobody's above the law.
The governors will probably tell you, Honorable, the governors will probably tell you that, look, we are obeying the Constitution simply by doing what we are doing. But let's take the final words also from Joyce Daniels, who also joined us in this conversation. For me, I would say the major issue here is the people, Joyce. The people, what do you think they have enough understanding, knowledge? How should we be dispensing this communication to the people in a way that they're not just aware, but they're educated, they own it, they know their rights, and they insist on the needful being done?
Thank you so much for this question. Growing up in the city of Port Harcourt, every time I was on my way to school, you would hear songs like, "Don't pull your neighbor down." You would hear songs like, "Time Now Money." Those songs were educating, they were enlightening, they were in bite sizes that we consume. A lot of the sounds we hear right now are not very enlightening. So you're asking for a way, we go back to those bite sizes, not going back to changing the national anthem. No, that's not what I mean by going back. I mean using the sorts of techniques and tools of bite size, informative, enlightening, orientation-focused entertainment, if and where possible. And of course, each one tell one. I always say that. Each one tell one. If you know it, gather a cell in your home. Some people in your living room, talk to them about it. Tell the other person in the place where you work, and keep going on. Keep pushing the narrative, because it is not one person's responsibility. The responsibility belongs to all of us. You're doing your bit today. The rest of us should do our bit. And just because I heard you start with it, I would say Happy New Month, especially to you, Auntie Alero.
Oh, dear. Joyce, stop looking for trouble. So, in closing, I think we should all bear in mind that the local government is an intermediary player between the federal government authority and the grassroots in a given society. Adequate and effective local authority indicates that government policies and activities reach the populace. On that note, I'd like to say thank you very much to our panel, made up of Honorable Salman Idris, Deputy Chairman, House Committee on Agric Institutions and Colleges of the 10th Assembly, Honorable Emeka Nwobi, Majority Leader, Delta State House of Assembly, and troublesome social commentator, Joyce Daniels. Thank you all very much for coming to share your insights with us this morning.
Thank you.
Sunrise will be right back with another interesting conversation. Do join us.
Are you aware of that conversation? And the CBN Act is up for tinkering? Well, in February last year, the IMF called for a review of the CBN Act, CBN 2007 Act, to strengthen the bank's autonomy and governance. That came around the time the Supreme Court made an order to suspend the ban on the old 1,500 and 200 naira notes, of course. Many then questioned the right of the court and the independence of the CBN. Now there is a proposed review of the CBN Act by the National Assembly. Many are raising concerns about it. They warn that the amendments could undermine the operational independence and flexibility of the CBN, which is crucial for achieving its price stability mandate. There are those on the other side of the divide who argue that the CBN's independence was not the problem, but the self-determined expansion of the scope of its mandate that seemed to undermine the roles of fiscal authority and created a matrix of conflicting institutional actions. Let's have a conversation around this morning. We have Ahmed Meyaki, who is a public affairs analyst. He joins us virtually this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning. Good one, everyone watching us from all parts of the world.
Yeah. Ogo Okiti joins us as well. He is Chief Executive Officer, Think Business Africa.
Yeah, good morning to you. I'm glad to be here at Sunrise.
Thank you so much. As well as Ugodre Obichukwu, who is a financial analyst and also CEO Nairametrics. Good morning, and thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Mr. Meyaki, let me begin with you. Would you say there is much ado about nothing when we talk about this CBN Act review, or it's, as some may assume, another attempt of some foreign organization to influence Nigeria's laws and operations?
Well, good morning. It's with mixed concerns. While it is okay for agencies like the IMF and, of course, the National Assembly, reviewing the acts establishing the CBN, that seems to everyone globally that an attempt to strengthen the bank, is a way of ensuring that CBN, the culture of compliance and strengthening the corporate governance, as well as ensuring that the bank improve in its services in line with the mandate of the bank. It's okay, but particularly you mentioned in the opening the need to ensure the autonomy of this bank. Certain provisions of the amendment is okay, but then there are certain parts that seeks to, affect the autonomy of the central bank, which of course will affect not only the operational autonomy of the bank against international practice, but it also, seeks to strengthen that issue of stability, because the whole essence is to ensure that we have a medium and short-term, perspective that ensures that we have an effective monetary policy, which is a global practice. But the provision of the amendment, assuming the National Assembly had gone with its public hearing, certain provisions, I think there are about 24 different sections of the Act, of the 2007 CBN Act that seeks to be amended, and that seeks to threaten the independence of a CBN as an apex bank, and that will also affect its mandate. There are certain provisions that talks about the tenure of the governor and the deputy governors. Certain provisions that also seeks to establish coordinating committee for the monetary and fiscal policy of the bank, which certainly will affect the operations of the bank, because you are bringing in fiscal authority to dominate this committee, and as well as affect the operations, as well as the operational autonomy of the bank in monetary authority. This is completely in variance with international best practice. Most banks in the world, we seek to emulate certain banks like America. They have the Federal Reserve, which serve as the central bank of the United States of America. That seeks to operate an independent, as an independent operations. They call it independent within government. The CBN of any country seeks to operate independent of government, so that it operates with that independence to be able to set up policies, that are completely in line with international best practice. This is the same with what you see in the Bank of England, in the UK, as well as Bank of Canada. A lot of countries in the world that we want to emulate their system, allow the central bank or the upper bank of the countries, to operate independent of fiscal authority.
Okay.
There are, like I've said,
all right, Mr. Mayaki,
certain provisions that is in conflict.
Mr. Mayaki, may we just bring the others into the conversation, please? Thank you very much. Mr. Okiti, do you think that the CBN Act of 2007, do you think it requires any amendment? And if you do you think it requires so many amendments? Because Mr. Mayaki has just told us that that there are about 24 being proposed.
Thank you so much for that question. I think the first thing is to say law is very, very dynamic. So I do not have the role of the National Assembly is to make laws. So if they actually think fit that the Act of 2007 do require some amendments, so be it. So I don't have any problem with that. I think where I think the problem is in relation to the process. So if you observe very, very carefully in the last 1 year since this National Assembly came into place, some of the laws and some of the changes that they have been seeking to make seem to come like a thief in the middle of the night. So whether you look at the cybersecurity and some other things. So for me, our law should be dynamic, the legal changes should be dynamic, and it is the right of the National Assembly to review them. However, the process must be very, very clear. There should be transparency, and the public should be involved as much as possible. So I'm glad that we are having this conversation. So now to your question directly, in terms of the 2007, I think it is the imperative of the National Assembly to state the objectives for which they are reviewing that law. So if you look at the law since 2007, we had Soludo under that law, we had Lamido Sanusi under that law, we had Governor Emefiele under that law. So we've had 3 governors. So what are the gaps that they have seen in that law? One, from what I have read that came out, one of the ones that I think they've seen that, okay, maybe the nature of the 2 terms, that's 2 terms, the governor potentially having 2 terms means that they are overly political or trying to please the president, so not as independent as it was meant to be in the law. That's number 1. Number 2, from what I have seen, I think they probably think that the notion of a central bank independence should not so much involve that of interest rates. So they want some powers around that measure. That's number two. Number three, I think there's the area of compliance. So I'm drawing their conclusions from the law from the amendments I've seen. The third one, I think, is in the area of compliance. So if you look at those three major areas, are there some changes that need to be made? Yes. However, we have to be very, very careful. So why should we be careful? I think Mayeka said that very well. We have to be careful that when we make changes to the law, it does not really affect the independence of the Central Bank of Nigeria. And especially when it comes to monetary policy, instruments and elements, that is very, very critical. Because when we talk about interest rate setting and interest rate changes, it is not just that the central bank makes those changes. It is that the market, the investors must actually see that there is no political influence at all. So it's not sufficient for us to just see a committee just making those changes. So when you have the law, the amendments that I saw, that I have seen, that they want to set up a kind of monetary and fiscal policy, there is nothing wrong with that body per se. You can have an informal setup, which I think already exists. So I think it should not be formalized, because when such structures become formalized, then it gives the impression that there are fiscal overbearance on the operations of monetary policy. And I think that is the most critical element of the amendments that I have a challenge with.
So is there a problem then with the independence? I'm taking that to you, Mr. Obichukwu. There are those who are questioning that independence, and then there are those who are saying don't interfere with it. Where do you sit, on that particular issue of independence of the CBN, particularly in the light of what happened when the CBN took that decision? Although, some would say, well, they took permission from the president. The independence now, in the light of what some consider the abuse of the Naira that saw to all the conversation that happened before the elections.
Thanks so much for the question, and interesting comments as well from the other guest. First of all, I'm a free markets proponent, so definitely would back independence of the CBN. If you look through history, especially recent one, and you ask yourself which countries currently don't have independent central banks, you're looking at Argentina, Turkey, Iran, Russia. These are the sort of countries that we want to mirror our CBN, against. Definitely not. Let's also remember clearly that we have had several CBN governors over the last 2 to 3 decades. And that we had a CBN governor that overused his powers, like I insist, was just a pure anomaly. And that also happened because you had a president of a government that allowed that to happen. Let's remember that this was a government that ran physical deficits for years and had huge shortage in revenue. And we also experienced different economic trajectory over the last 8 to 10 years. We saw oil prices dip. We had 2 recessions. We had COVID-19. We had exchange rate crisis. And all through this period, you had very low government revenue. And so that gave the central bank unnecessary powers and allowed it to misuse the powers of development finance. So that exactly is the issue here. And so it's important for us to, separate the mistakes of the past and the learnings from it, and not try to throw away the baby and the bathwater. Now, let's not also throw away what they're trying to do. There are some important amendments that I've seen that they want to introduce that are quite commendable. For example, allowing women to be clearly stating that you need to have a woman as part of the board of directors of CBN. I think that is commendable. I think the section around trying to make sure that issuance of legal tender does not go through the same kind of crisis that we did last year, I think that is quite commendable. The area around recapitalization of banks, I think that is also quite commendable as well. They're trying to make sure that the central bank itself is recapitalized as it's trying to recapitalize other banks. However, what I do not agree with, and no one should ever agree with it, is allowing the central bank's core independence to be impinged on. You cannot have a committee of the central bank and maybe the Minister of Finance and having them have a coordinated monetary and fiscal policy to decide on interest rate. That should never happen. And there's a core reason why. Interest rate setting from a central bank's perspective would always be different from what fiscal authorities want to do. Fiscal authorities are oftentimes politicians, so they tend to have short to mid-term goals when it comes to setting fiscal policy, and sometimes it's politically motivated. Now, the reason why you insulate the central bank from all this is that the central bank has a different view of the economy. You need to have that independence because they look clearly at the long term. They look at inflation, they look at interest rate setting, they look at your exchange rate policy. So those things do not require any form of political interference. And I think that is sacrosanct. It is something that we must protect clearly. And those are the areas that I don't agree with. Another one as well was the one on budget. Why would you want the National Assembly to start to get involved in approving the budget of the central bank? We shouldn't even allow that to happen. In fact, that is just a cesspool of disaster because then you start to have unnecessary debates about the central bank's budget. The central banks can't even function properly. And then you now have an entirely politicized central bank, worse than what we even had in the last 8 years or so. So those are my concerns. And like I stated earlier, very, very important that as a country that is looking to integrate itself globally, that continues to look for global financing, global funding, global investors, your central bank policy, the construct of the law governing your central bank, must be consistent with what you have in countries that you want to emulate. It's as clear as that. So that's why I started with, do you want to be like Iran? Do you want to be like Turkey? Do you want to be, do you want to be in the mode of countries that have economic crises? So that is my own take here. Thank you.
Interesting perspective, Mr. Obi Chukwu. Mr. Maeki, let me come back to you on this particular issue. I mean, one of the proposed amendments is also talking about a chief compliance officer in the rank of a deputy governor, which is expectedly answerable to the board and appear before relevant committees of the National Assembly. What's your take on that?
Well, that is a completely duplication of what we have in place right now. You cannot have, yes, it is okay, while it is okay to have a chief compliance officer within the bank that ensures the CBN operates within, provided laws. It is completely interfering in the operations of the bank where you have chief compliance officer reporting outside the board. Yes, you can have anybody in the ranking of a deputy governor as chief compliance officer, but that is eroding on the autonomy of the bank. We keep, like the last speaker, Mr. Obi Chukwu, mentioned, we cannot seek to want to emulate certain emerging economies of the world and operate completely at variance to those things we want to emulate. The chief compliance officer, in my opinion, is an attempt, yes, to strengthen the bank's compliance to best practices. But right now, aside that would be a duplication because you have in the federal arrangement within and outside the bank, a mechanism that seeks to ensure that the bank operates within the provided laws and there are no excesses like we saw in the last 8 years. Yes, everything that is done should be done within that ambit of the law. But when you have so many checks, that will affect the process of the monetary policy and as well as the issue of inflation that is being currently managed within the short and long term by the management of the bank. So we should not cage the bank. We should not, do such things that seems to emasculate the operations of the bank, that erodes the authority of the bank to be able to take certain decisions. The National Assembly has oversight functions. The committee, the Banking and Other Financial Institutions Committee has the oversight functions, yes, to check the excesses of the bank. But this same arrangement was in place when we had the tenure of Emefiele doing such things that seems to contravene the international best practice. So we're going to compound on the challenges. We're going to restrict and ensure that the operations of the banks are affected in ensuring stability for the monetary policy and, of course, for the economy. What we are seeing right now under the Cardoso-led leadership is something that deserves commendation because, like the previous speakers has mentioned, the issue of development financing, we have seen currently the CBN is deviating from that, is focusing on the monetary policy of the country because development financing is a direct distraction. We saw the last CBN going into security, going into agri, going into health, going into education, which is completely, a deviation from the monetary policy functions of the CBN. So we must see a CBN that functions very effectively, and it cannot function effectively when you have so many bottlenecks, like bringing in a chief compliance officer that reports to the board, rather than the leadership, because a CBN leadership must be seen to operate without any interference within or outside the operations of the bank. So we want to see that those other mechanisms that strengthen this process of ensuring compliance, without unnecessarily bringing on bottlenecks. Because in my opinion, the chief compliance officer will be a duplication of what we already have in the structures that manages the bank, and vis-a-vis the monetary policy functions of the bank, and then of course the stability both within the long and short-term plan, which is, that is the best practice that is being done all over the world. We cannot seek to want to emulate certain emerging economies, and then we want to have a different ball game for us. It doesn't work that way. In addition to this, they talked about also the tenure of the leadership of the bank. The CBN, the governor should serve for a single 6-year period. And that is also completely at variance with the international best practice. We keep talking about other economies. Bank of England, encourages that tenure of governors should last for 8 years. In fact, for America, the Federal Reserve, provides for a 14-year term, those staggered, but it allows you this longer period to be able to plan for your monetary policy, for the stability of your, of your inflation, as well as the economy. So we must be able to operate within this ambit that is promoted all over the world. And this directly or indirectly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayaki. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Obichukwu, let's talk about ways and means for a minute. It seemed like the expression just happened on our consciousness in the last dispensation under Godwin Emefiele. Is there provision for that in the Act? And if there is there any move now to change that? Because we saw how this ways and means thing was abused greatly.
Yes, of course, we all remember how Ways and Means was abused under the Buhari administration, of course, spearheaded by Emefiele himself. The law was very clear on the maximum amount that can be extended to the government. Let's remember that Ways and Means is essentially an overdraft to the government against immediate revenue. So it's not even a provision that is meant to, or a credit that is meant to be long-term. I think it was just 5% of prior year's revenue, maximum of that. However, what had happened was, because if you remember what I had mentioned, we had gone through several years of fiscal deficit where government was nowhere close to meeting its revenue. And so the only other place to turn to was the central bank. And if I remember famously, it was the former CBN governor, Sanusi, that brought this issue to the fore. And so what we've seen in the amendment that they are proposing is that I think they sort of mentioned it should not be more than 10% of cumulative 3 years revenue. Not really clear what that means, whether is it the total revenue for the last 3 years of government budget? Is it actual amount collected or budgeted revenue? Because there's a huge difference between budgeted revenue and actual revenue that the government collects. And then not also very clear on who would be responsible if that provision is breached. Is it the CBN governor? Is it the governors of the CBN? Is it even the presidency itself, which typically would have to be in cohort with the central bank for this to even happen? So that is the area that I'm not very clear on. But I do think that ways and means needs to be addressed. The provisions, the aspect of the act that governs or that covers the ways and means need to be addressed clearly. It needs to be clearer. It wasn't like there was anything that wrong with the previous provision. The difference was there was no punitive measure. So it wasn't a crime to contravene ways and means as it was construed in the CBN Act 2007. So if you actually want to make any amendment, that is probably what you need to go back and do and say, look, if you contravene this, then this is what will happen to ABCD. So rather than start to now say, 3 years government revenue or 4 years revenue, suggesting that you're even trying to expand the scope of ways and means itself. Ways and means, like I said, is just an overdraft, very short-term overdraft, not even meant to be owed beyond a year. Otherwise, you will not even be able to go back to the CBN to collect another one if you haven't paid the one before.
Okay, very interesting. Let me come back to you, Mr. Kitty. What is it that will be different? Okay, before that, let me talk about this. There are a number of loopholes that have been mentioned from time to time. There are appeals also for caution before I bring that on, again to you, Mr. Kitty, what are the most amends? What are the things in this law that you think must be amended? A little asked about the ways and means, and people didn't start hearing about it, even though it's, the response has been there. What are the things that must be amended? The ways and means thing, when people heard it, they were scandalized by the fact that such amount should happen like that. There are those who are saying, look, we don't want the independence of the CBN, eroded, but at the same time, there should be some kind of way in which we can ensure that the CBN governor stays on the straight and narrow path. What are the things that must be amended, in your opinion, and what are the things that must not be touched?
Okay, thank you again for those questions. So I actually think that Ugo has answered this question in a different way. So let me go direct now. The laws that we have from 2007, those laws were very, very clear in some respects. So let me mention two things that were wrong in the last 8 years, two things that went wrong in the last 8 years. Then let's apportion where the blame was. The first one, of course, was the ways and means that we said. Whose blame was that? Who do we blame? We blame the president and the governor of the central bank, not the law, because the law was very clear. So in that context, the law was not the problem. It was that the people that were supposed to actually hold on to the law to ensure that the law that they passed was adhered to was the National Assembly and was not that. So that's number one. Number two, let me tell you also something that happened in the last 8 years, which is probably making us amend this law. The Central Bank of Nigeria did not release its audit report for 7 years. It did not release its audit report, but it is very, very clear in the law that the audited report should be released. So the National Assembly did not enforce that law. And because it did not enforce that law, we are in this mess that we are in today. So it's not so much about new amendments, it's that can we please just start implementing the laws that we already have? And I'm not suggesting that I already said in my first time when I first spoke The law should be very, very dynamic, yes. However, if we take so much time to amend this law, and we are not prepared to enforce those laws, we'll be having this conversation again in 10 years' time. So that is the point. We need to have ways in which we adhere to all our laws. So we pass laws all the time, whether he's in the fiscal arena, whether he's in the monetary policy arena, whether he's in the criminal arena, whatever laws, we just keep passing laws. However, every day people break those laws with impunity. So in terms, let me now answer some of your questions directly. In terms of what should be, there are some things that were wrong. Ways and Means was definitely one of them. Ways and Means. The reason Ways and Means was very, very critical, and of course it's very, very bad, is because of its effect on macroeconomic instability and its effects on investment and its effects on uncertainty. So there should be no, leeway in the management of Ways and Means. Let me tell you the other side of Ways and Means, which makes it very, very difficult. The National Assembly, by raising some complex around these Ways and means that we don't want to actually rein in our expenditure on the fiscal side. We don't want to deal with our expenditure on the fiscal side. We are looking for easy money. Easy money is printing money. But we don't need easy money. Let the fiscal side of the economy go and raise their resources and spend according to the resources that they have raised, such that the monetary policy instruments that we have can be effective. Because at the moment, it's not effective. The central bank is raising rates and raising rates and raising rates. However, inflation is just skyrocketing and the economy is getting worse. Why? Because the fiscal side has not been able to maintain any semblance of a balanced budget in the last 30 years. That is the problem.
We're costing home now, gentlemen, so I'll take 1 minute from each person. What kind of appeals, and I think that's where I would start, because it's something the CBN is already, talking about, and of course opinions are divided on it, but in the interest of Nigeria, not just the government, but the interest of Nigeria, gentlemen, what appeals should we be making to the legislators who will deliberate on this review? Let me begin with you, Mr. Mayaki. 1 minute.
Okay, quickly, our appeal to the National Assembly, particularly to the committee, is to focus on those areas that will strengthen the functions of the bank as a fiscal authority, to ensure that we operate within the ambit of the law and then in line with international best practice. Our problem as a country is not essentially the problem of laws. We have so many laws, like Okiti rightly pointed out. We have so many laws. The issue is with the issue of complying with such laws.
Okay.
Let's ensure that we strengthen the bank to operate independent, autonomously, without any interference from the fiscal authority. Having the minister, for instance, the Minister of Finance chairing the committee for the fiscal issues, that is interfering. That is also compounding on the authority of the bank. Okay. Let's strengthen the bank. The committee or the National Assembly should do such things that strengthen the bank, like Section 20.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayeki. I think we need to convoke a national conference just for you to speak on this matter. Mr. Obichukwu, your 1 minute starts now.
All right. Thank you so much. Quickly, leave the CBN alone. Leave them alone. CBN needs to be independent. We don't need politicians, messing with the CBN.
I agree.
And then more importantly, the problem is not the law. It's the person, it's the individuals, it's the personalities. Starting from, the legislators. Let us make sure the right people are at the helm of the CBN or any political office for that matter, or any office for that matter. And then you will see the sort of changes that we want. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Okiti, you spoke the other time, so I'm giving you 20 seconds.
Well, I mean, thank you so much for that 20 seconds. Very, very generous. I mean, let me repeat. Law should be very dynamic. So, and it is the prerogative of the National Assembly to change its laws. So I do not have a problem with that. However, I'm speaking for this particular amendment and for other amendments and for other laws. Let it be widely available before it becomes law. That is the process. The process is very, very important. That's number one. And of course, number two, you can change the CBN law where it is necessary, but there is no point wasting time and energy making amendments if we know that the last 8 years, the problem of the last 8 years was not necessarily the absence of law, but the absence of appropriate measures to ensure that people have to the law. Thank you so very much.
Mr. Okiti, the next time I'll give you the loan of time. I'll put an interest on it. I have to thank you, gentlemen, for being here this morning. Ugodre Obichukwu, financial analyst and CEO, Nairametrics. Thank you so much for your time. Ogo Okiti, Chief Executive Officer, Think Business Africa. Thank you. As well as Ahmed Meyaki, Public Affairs Analyst. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
Well, we're not leaving these money matters yet, but not just the way you think. Right after this break.
Thank you for staying with us. The Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress have said that they are declaring an indefinite strike starting Monday, the 3rd of June, after failing to agree a new minimum wage with the government. They had said on May the 1st that they would down tools if a new minimum wage was not agreed by the end of the month. So, the unions in a statement said, quote, government refused to move forward. Not even a kobo was added to the 60,000 naira that they proposed on Tuesday. So, we rightly rejected. End of quote. So, no minimum wage has been agreed. Government stood at 60,000 naira. That is 100% of the former minimum wage. And Labour was saying, no can do. Most services and goods have gone up by 300, 400%. So how can an increase of 100% to the workers deal with that level of increase? We're going to have this conversation with the Director General and CEO, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, Mr. Segun Ajayi Kadiri. Good morning, Mr. Ajayi Kadiri.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on your show.
So, Labour is calling out a strike yet again. What are your thoughts about this strike at this time when things are very difficult? They're very difficult, I know, and Labour is asking for more money for workers. I mean, what government is offering is only the equivalent of $40. Your thoughts?
Okay, thank you again for having me. I think that to start with, this is a very difficult time for anyone to negotiate minimum wage. So from the perspective of government and the perspective of labor, and of course, the organized private sector, we operate in an environment where there is a general acceptance of the fact that the macroeconomics are not right. Even the global economy is experiencing a lot of shake-up, and the domestic economy itself is grappling with the aftermath of government's necessary reforms. So naturally, and even from the beginning of the negotiation of the minimum wage, it's evident to the tripartite, that is the government, the labor, and the organized private sector, that we are going to operate in a rather difficult terrain. So when we finished the meeting on the national minimum wage, which was generally called to have some agreement, some closure on the rates to be agreed. It's unfortunate that Labour chose the path of declaring a strike and rejecting the offer of both the government and the organized private sector. I believe that for us in the private sector, this is a very, very difficult time. And already we are grappling with the inadequacy in the macroeconomic environment, rising costs, infrastructure, insecurity, and so on and so forth. But to now compound it with an industrial action is actually debilitating to the productive sector, particularly the manufacturing sector. So what we are seeing is a situation where if we are not able to produce, even with all the challenges that we have, is going to have a ripple effect, not only on our production process, but on labor itself. I mean, because if we down tools and we are unable to produce, it is doubtful if we'll be able to pay even the offer that the private sector has made and the government itself.
Okay.
So I think that what needed to be done is for us to have a conversation that allows us to continue with the process until we are able to reach some form of agreement. But as to what the effect will be on the private sector, of course, it's going to disrupt the process and leave us in a situation where it will be worse than where we started from.
Mr. Ajayi Kadri, how much is organized private sector offering?
Incidentally, the organized private sector and government have offered 60,000 as the minimum wage. Okay. And I think it is very important for us to understand that what we are talking about is the minimum wage. That is what some people have called the walk-in wage.
Yeah.
That means it is the amount you will pay the least worker in the country. As somebody who is expected to be a fresher, somebody who is expected to be earning his first wage in paid employment, for instance, and somebody who is aspiring to grow in the ladder. And it is minimum wage we are negotiating, not actually a living wage.
Well, interesting, Mr. Kadri Ajayi. Mr. Ajayi Kadri. Before that, I'd like you to do us one favor. Take us to the room. What's the mood in the room when these conversations are going on? Nigerians would be wondering, look, you guys just sit around the table, you decide this. We don't even know what is happening. Unfortunately, of course, we can't have a, what do we call it now, live telecast of the negotiations. But give us an idea of what the mood in the room is like. It's been a long time since the federal government and the organized private sector were on the same side.
Yeah, so I think that what has happened now is that we have reached the critical stage where we all have to come together. And it's a very interesting development, and I get the direction you are coming from. We see what has happened is that all of us in the tripartite, the government, the labor, and the private sector, we all knew that we were operating in a very difficult environment. The government itself realized that it has limited capacity to pay. The private sector is constrained by macroeconomic and infrastructure security challenges. So we're also constrained to pay. And labor is under intense pressure from its constituency to ask for higher wages because inflation has hit the roof. And the operating environment is tough. The average income compared to what it can buy is shrinking. So we were all uptight about the operation. And throughout the negotiation process, we made it known that this is not the best of times to negotiate minimum wage. This is not the best. This is the time for us to agree to grow the economy, queue behind the government, and grow the economy in such a way that we will bake a bigger cake and then we'll be able to share. I mean, we must not lose sight of the fact that before this administration came in, our economy suffered. And we are now experiencing the hardness of insensitivity of government to what needed to be done at the appropriate time. So we have a situation where we have to negotiate the minimum wage. Unfortunately for us, we didn't have an understanding before we commenced the assignment. And I must say this, we didn't have an understanding that we are leaders. As elites, we needed to have a correct understanding of where the country is at this time. Whether it is possible for us to retain the workforce that we have and then be able to pay the kind of minimum wage that is being demanded by labor. I mean, for government, I'm aware that they have constraints in terms of how the economy is moving, what monies are available, and all that is needed to be done to improve infrastructure and so on and so forth. At the level of the private sector, I must tell you, we have offered 100% increase from the last minimum wage. There is no company in Nigeria, no manufacturing industry in Nigeria that has achieved 100% increase in terms of its profitability, either before or after tax, either in terms of turnover as well. So we have challenges. And of course, you must also speak of the labor, that they also have challenges. I mean, all of us go to the same market and we understand what it is. So it's for us to remain on the table where we are able to agree on what needed to be done and even space out the expectations that labor has. Because we are all employers and this is one country that we have. We cannot afford to cripple the economy when all we needed to do was continue to build it. I think President Tinubu was very clear when he emerged as president that these are not going to be easy times. And I think we needed to tighten our belt to be able to deliver on an economy that we know has been seriously battered. Of course, government also on its own side has to demonstrate leadership and sensitivity and presence of mind, as well as sense of occasion of the period that we are in. And then so government expenditure, government choices of what needed to be done, how much needed to be spent, the cost of governance itself, all of it has to come to the table. Because I think what Labour is actually worried about is that they appear to be the ones that are on the brunt of it. But we needed to be able to engage, working out on the process and declaring strikes. I do not think that that is what is going to solve this problem now. Because now in the private sector, we are already suffering low capacity utilization, extremely low purchases because our warehouses are full. We have about 217 billion of unplanned inventory that we are not able to sell. And recently we've had an unconscionable increase in tariff of electricity that is not possible for us to live with and be able to produce and make profit. So there are so many challenges that are coming. And I believe that the tripartite ought to be able to have an engagement that will allow us to maybe space out our challenges and reach an amicable settlement as to what we can do and how we can scale up immediately.
Mr. Jai-Kadri, I feel for you, and by you, I mean each of you at that meeting, because each person will bring up points and the points will be valid. The worker, for instance, has to face hikes in housing costs, hike in transportation costs, hike, in fact, feeding in capital letters he has to face, electricity in capital letters, all those have gone up by several percentage points. Then government will put forward its own case as well, which are valid. But the worker, of course, is looking at government. If you tightened your belt a bit, maybe you could offer us a bit more. If you reduced all the loopholes where stealing is going on, where we hear that XYZ minister or this has gone away with several billions, then maybe you will be able to find more money to pay us. And OPS also has its own points. So I feel for all three of you at this meeting, but the laborer is thinking about, how am I going to pay all these bills? I used to pay 400 naira to get to work and get back home. Now I'm paying 2,000. Where should I get the money from? If this minimum wage stays as low as you all want it to be at 60,000 naira, you are going to face losses. I'm sure you have thought about all that, because your goods are going to be carted away and things are going to be happening in your manufacturing places. Mr. Ajayi Kadiri?
Yes, it's an extremely difficult situation that we have. And like I said before, this is not the best time to negotiate minimum wage at all. It is not. And I can assure you that all the problems that the labor has listed and all those things you have explained, they more or less appear the same way with us in the organized private sector. The exchange rate has completely gone out of the proportion that we felt it should. We also have the devaluation of the naira. We have the removal of fuel subsidy. We have a situation where the price of electricity has gone up. Apart from the price of electricity, we all know that there are several reforms that needed to be made. And I think Mr. President was very clear as to what we needed to do. He didn't leave anybody in doubt that times are going to be hard.
Yeah.
So what was needed, like you rightly said, was for government to demonstrate that we are all in it together.
Thank you.
And so you will expect that there will be an immediate wind down on cost of governance.
Thank you.
Both in the executive arm of government and in the legislative arm of government. Probably this will have sent the right signals to labor. But I must say that we should never lose sight of the fact that what we are negotiating is the minimum wage. Of course, there will be consequential adjustment for all other cadres. But we needed to be able to continue to have a conversation. What I'm particularly worried about, and what the private sector is worried about, is the absence of consultations. You see, because you rightly recognize that these are difficult times, you cannot expect us to reach an agreement very quickly. The federal government itself is constrained, because after fixing the minimum wage, the next important thing is sustainability. There are some states that have only started to pay what we agreed 5 years ago. We needed to deal with the issue of compliance. And you know, immediately Mr. President signs, it becomes law. Now, for all those who have failed to comply in the last 5 years, there has been no consequence. I mean, so what is the certainty we have? That if we go ahead to fix a much higher rate, we'll be able to get compliance, particularly from the state.
Well, Mr. Ajayi Kadiri, the answer to that,
I believe that
just a second, if you can hear me.
Conversations.
Yeah, my apologies. There are those who would say, well, of course, it's a question we've put out to some authorities, such as yourself before, and I think legislators. One of the issues there is that, look, we can't even bring up the idea that some state governors can't pay the minimum wage because they now get more money than they ever did before now, especially with the fuel subsidy removal. We also understand that the subsidy at the time was costing the Federal Republic of Nigeria about $10 billion every year. But now that has been saved quite significantly, and which means that, you know, states now have money from, a little more money from FAC. But then there is also the argument that some people, workers, labor, whoever, will bring up that, look, even though you say that federal government is going to feel it, the organized private sector is going to feel it, They say that you guys are living large. CEOs of government organizations, of private organizations, they are living large, right around in their SUVs. Big salaries and very, very expensive and affluent benefits to their pay. Some look at the convoy of the president, for instance. Look at the convoy of the president of the Senate. Convoy of the governors, thank you, Alero. And they said, you guys are living large, so we want to live a tiny little bit large as well. So what do you say to them in response? How can you convince Labour that there isn't money when all of you are driving around in big SUVs?
Well, honestly, that is a big concern even to us in the private sector. We have always indicated that, look, we operate in a tough environment. The macroeconomics not right. Government revenue is shrinking, and government avenues to even increase its revenue is always also dwindling. So there has to be a demonstration on the part of government that we are in it together. I think Labour has raised that severally, and they have actually been assured that it's going to be part of the report that the National Minimum Wage Committee was going to pass on to Mr. President, so that Mr. President is able to encourage other tiers of government and other arms of government to be able to respect the situation that we have found ourselves in. Don't forget that we are only a federal government committee, and that there is a separation of powers, and there are also different tiers of government, where each tier has some relative autonomy. But as a committee of the federal government, we had indicated in our various subcommittees that we needed to call on government to ensure that the environment in which we operate is reflected on the cost of governance, and that if you are asking us to tighten your belt, you should tighten your own belt as well. I mean, so that we all know that when we do get out of this, we will all loosen our belts at the same time. A laborer is deserving of his wage. There's no doubt about that. And at the committee, I mean, if Labour will agree, I mean, to say what actually happened, every time that we met, we always knew the situation that we were in. We knew that these are difficult times. We know that we have not gotten our macroeconomics right. We know that there's insecurity, there's infrastructure deficiency. We know that costs are rising. The inflation is rising, and that businesses are suffering. So part of the recommendations we are going to make to the president is to ensure that we operate in a lower cost environment. Because for us in the manufacturing sector, for instance, we are competing with products that come from low-cost environments. And if we continue to escalate our costs, even in our own market, they will beat us. Not to talk of the need for us to be able to export our products. Everyday costs are rising. And even electricity that you yourself mentioned, it constitutes about 28 to 40% of our cost structure. So when you move it up by more than 250%, what are you saying? You're asking everyone that is manufacturing to go home. And we can't afford that. You can imagine if, as Labour declared that they are going on strike, the manufacturing sector also goes on strike, for instance. We'll bring the country, but that cannot be in the interest of anybody. It's not in the interest of Labour, it's not in the interest of organized private sector, and it's certainly not in the interest of government. Because President Tinubu had promised that he was going to improve production. And that is what we should hold him up to and give the necessary support that is needed.
Has there been any overture from any side to make sure that this action doesn't start on Monday, it doesn't that Labour does not go ahead with it?
Yeah, so we are trying to reach out in our various ways, mostly informal, because I'm not aware that there's going to be any meeting of the National Minimum Wage Committee. But I must say that there is need for us between today and tomorrow for us to avert this strike. I can assure you that the economy cannot afford any strike at this time. We need to be able to put our acts together. We need to be able to engage as leaders and as elites in Nigeria so that we do not disappoint the teeming population of Nigerians that are looking for us to demonstrate leadership at this tough time. These are tough times for everybody, for government, for labor, and for the private sector. What we need to do is to continuously engage and see how we can narrow the differences that we have. We cannot afford a national strike at this time. And I think the message should be very clear. And this administration has only spent 1 year. We needed to be able to understand what is going to happen in the next 3 years so that we are all able to queue behind government and have a national agenda that will promote productivity and ensure that the teeming Nigerians that are looking forward to good governance are able to experience the dividends of democracy, as they say. So I think we need to return to the table, and between now and Monday, to be able to strike an agreement that averts it, right, and assures labor that we are all on the same page. I think government needs to do more, and in conjunction with the other legs of the tripartite, to achieve that before Monday.
The press conferences that Labour has had after those meetings generally give the impression that government does not care. I don't know if some of us are reading the wrong meanings into what things are being said and what things are not being said. Did you get that feeling?
Well, I don't think that government does not care. I believe that government is constrained. I mean, that's my honest opinion. Government is constrained to pay higher. And I think that is the same thing also with us, because, I mean, what we are talking about is the minimum wage. And in the membership of MAN, for instance, we have more than 75% of us that are in the small-scale segment. So we need to be able to understand what they can pay. Because when this minimum wage is signed into law, what it means is that it becomes a disobedience of the law when you pay lower. So we should get the sense we are talking about. That means that any manufacturer, for instance, that has more than maybe 60 or 70 workers must pay a minimum of 60,000. How profitable are you to be able to deliver? Capacity utilization in the manufacturing sector is less than 50%. Our profitability has dwindled. Everybody has his warehouse full, and Nigerians are not able to buy. So if you raise the minimum wage, where are you going to pay? I mean, we have cases of industries leaving Nigeria. Why are they leaving? It's because of the tough environment. So if you raise the minimum wage beyond what we are able to pay, you are simply asking for downsizing and inability to pay. So I think that for government, I don't see any feeling of that they do not care. It's just that government must demonstrate that they are also in this for us, and to ensure that we remain on the negotiation table so that we'll be able to have an agreement that works for everybody. Because those in labor are also Nigerians. Government itself is Nigerian. Our president is a Nigerian. And those of us that operate in the private sector, we are Nigerians. We all go to the same market. So, I mean, we should be able to have we should be able to be patriotic enough to agree on something that will be agreeable to Nigeria. We must not be unmindful of the fact that the labor is representing a huge number of workers. But at the same time, there are so many Nigerians that are not government workers.
Yes.
And I believe that when we negotiate this minimum wage, it's going to have a national application. So we should be mindful of the capacity of those that are even outside of government and outside the purview of the organized private sector to comply with the law.
Okay.
So I think that's the kind of conversation we should have so that we'll be able to reach an amicable agreement. It is not good for any arm of the tripartite to assume that the other one does not care. Otherwise, why are we in the same boat? And why did Mr. President set us up? I mean, we're a group of people that are supposed to lead the country at this difficult time. And we need to exercise restraint, we need to exercise understanding, and we need to be conscious of the environment in which we operate. I can recall, I don't know whether it's right to say it, but the coordinating minister for the economy has laid the figures on the table about how we are performing and how we are delivering. So it is for us to look at it and negotiate effectively so that we provide leadership. Nigeria is desirous. Nigerians are desirous of an environment where all the players queue behind an administration to deliver national development. That is what we need. And
CEO.
I don't think staying away and throwing tantrums and the rest is going to deliver that.
CEO, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, Mr. Segun Ajayi Kadiri. Please do all you can to avert the strike of Monday, because in our circumstances now, the last thing we need is an industrial action. The hunger is enough as it is, and it will get worse should there be any strike action. Thank you very much for coming on Sunrise this morning.
Oh, it just so happens that Okay, Alero says that how do people eat? How do people feed these days? On top, as some people will say, as Chief Zebridara Okorigben will say, on top of that, you ask people to come and donate blood.
I wonder.
Then they are asking you, which blood I get?
In fact, the donor clinic or whatever will probably send them away. Say, not be your kind blood with your friends.
Well, let's see if that will happen. Let's see if that will happen. We have with us here this morning Dr. Bodrin Oshikomaya, who is a hematologist as well as Executive Secretary of Lagos State Blood Transfusion Committee. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very, very much.
Okay, answer her question.
Really, it's true.
It's true, right?
Yes,
See?
people are not coming out to donate blood as much as before because they just assume that because things are not so good, I'm not eating as well as before, it's probable that I don't have enough blood. But that's not true. We still have to check.
So there is a blood meter in my body that will
No. We have the blood meter. Called him a blood meter. So we just take a drop, check if it's enough. If it's not enough,
if it's a drop, that's fine then.
So we just take a pinprick will drop.
A drop.
Though some people,
just to check, yes.
Some people will still take about 0.5 mil. That's like something very tiny. But most of the time, when you come to the voluntary donation centers, all we need is a drop.
Okay. I think what would be important to anyone right now is, what are the benefits of donating blood? You are taking from me and you're saying I'm benefiting from you.
Of course, lots of benefits.
Nobody is happy to part with money.
Blood is not money, blood is life. Blood is not money, blood is life. So there are quite a number of benefits. There's a benefit for the donor, and there is another set of benefits for the person receiving it. So we are here talking about the donor. So the first benefit is that you have a free health check. Now everything seems to be difficult. Nobody wants to go to the hospital for any check because it costs some money. So if you want to donate blood, you will have an opportunity to be asked a lot of questions. It's like a free consultation. You are there, we're asking you, are you fine? What is wrong with you? Have you had anything happen to you in the past few months or the past few weeks? And if you have concerns, an opportunity to talk to a healthcare personnel. So first of all, you have a free health check. You have a free mini consultation. We check your blood pressure, your temperature, all sorts are done. And we're also able to counsel you about your lifestyle generally. So that is, to me, one of the major benefits of it. Another thing is that you're able to be tested for all these infectious agents. So you don't know you have an infection, you're walking around. As people say, HIV no dey show for face, hepatitis no dey show for face. So it's an opportunity for you to be tested regularly. You also have an opportunity to reduce your iron levels, because if you donate blood regularly, your iron levels are reduced. And there are studies that show that if you have a reduced iron level or if you donate regularly, there's a lesser incidence of cardiac illnesses. I'd rather donate blood and not have cardiac diseases and not have a higher incidence of having stroke. There's also studies that say that people that donate blood regularly have a lower incidence of cancers. Cancers are not palatable things. So I'd rather donate blood.
What's the connection?
So the iron levels are known to increase the incidence of many different types of cancers, especially breast cancers, thyroid cancers, all those cancers that involve double organs. It has been shown that reduced iron levels have an association with them, people developing such cancers. Apart from that, donating blood helps you to save other people's life. Like, you have a voluntary donation card from the blood transfusion service.
Yes.
And with that voluntary donation card, I know that look.
I've got to be healthy before I can become altruistic, haven't I?
Yes, you have to be healthy. And that is why I said the first you have a mini health check. If you are not healthy, there's a very, very good referral system. If you notice anything wrong, we give you a referral letter, send it to your doctors. There are some doctors directly affiliated to the blood transfusion service, especially the donor centers within hospitals. So once you notice anything, we give you a referral. We say, doctor, we also expect, because in that referral letter, there's a response part.
I will pay when I go to see that doctor.
Well, if you come to the hospitals, you're not going to pay to see a doctor, but you might need to pay for health, for the investigations. And talking about that, that is where health insurance has come in. We are here telling everybody, register into the Ilera Eco, register into Lashma. I don't want to talk about it, yes. So I'm not going to go there again. I'm going to stop there. But really, right now, everywhere in the world, the best way to access health is having a health insurance.
It's not as if those are cheap either.
Well, it's cheap. Health insurance is cheap in Nigeria. Let's not go there. Yes, let's not go there.
Oh.
Let's not go there.
I know that my health insurance is not cheap.
Well, have you tried that health insurance I talked about that you said we shouldn't talk about right now?
Please, we need to see after
We need to see after
so I can switch.
We need to see after now.
So how often can one donate blood?
So you can donate blood every 3 to 4 months. A lot of males donate blood regularly every 3 months. For females, the timeline is longer because, you know, we females, we also lose a bit of blood regularly. So the timeline
by nature, we lose it every month.
And it makes us look beautiful. When you are losing blood every month, you are finer, you are prettier. Try the blood.
Okay.
What is she talking about?
Yes, I should
That you are beautifuler.
Beautifuler. Okay. All right.
I want to take you to some things. You know, tell us about some myths about blood donation. And how do you deal with them?
So the first myth is what you mentioned there. I don't have enough blood. It is a myth. Because before you can say you don't have enough blood, you have to check it up for you first. So that's usually the first one. So we encourage people, okay, agreed, you might not have enough blood, but let's see. We should have a scientific evidence that the blood is there, it's enough or not.
You need to check it with a bloodometer.
Yes, we check it with that bloodometer. Because if the blood is not enough, then you need health care. We need to advise you on your diet. We need to advise you to see a doctor. So if it is not enough, then it's not good for you.
Okay, how about those who believe that okay, well, we want to mention other myths first.
They are quite odd, okay.
Let me take you through some of them.
Yeah.
There are those who believe that if you have certain medical conditions, you can donate blood.
Yes, it is true. There are certain medical conditions that you can't donate blood. For example, if somebody has a very bad cardiac condition, maybe you've had a past stroke, or if you have all those infections like hepatitis, HIV, or leukemias, those cancers, you cannot donate blood. But there are also some medical conditions that does not stop you from donating blood. Things like hypertension, if it is well controlled and you're on your drugs and your doctors have given you a clean bill of health, then you can donate blood. Diabetic mellitus, we have people that are diabetic and they are having adequate control of their blood sugar, they can donate blood. So it's not all conditions. So for example, that is partially a myth and a fact. So it depends on the type of health condition we're talking about.
How about those who feel that, if I go and donate blood now, sorry, I'm using Nigerian balance. Once I donate blood, I'll be too tired. I won't be able to walk for like 24 hours. I'll be too tired.
That is a big myth. Once you donate blood, you just have to rest for about 10 minutes, there and then, and you're fine to go. But we tell donors not to do any strenuous activities. So if you are working with very heavy equipment, like people that cut trees, or you're working in a factory that you have to work with large equipment, we tell you, well, why don't you wait until you are not going back to work to donate that? But really, you donate blood because it's the excess we are collecting. We're not taking so much. We are collecting the excess from you. So you have enough to do anything. So within 10 minutes after donation.
I don't understand what you mean by excess. You all have told us that a human being has X number of pints of blood in their body. So where is the excess stored? Under my toes?
Also in your body. So every human being has about 5 to 6 liters of blood there. But if it is more than that,
Has
about 5 to 6 liters of blood.
liters?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So when it is more than that, that is what we take.
So if it's more than that, why is it more than that?
Your body
produces it.
You tell us, there is something that I've heard about.
It is not harmful to my body?
It is not harmful, but when it is too much, that is what, we have a condition called polycythemia, when it is too much. When we are talking about levels above 50%, 60%, and that is why you need to come to check all the time. At that time, then you need to see a doctor.
Okay, I'm still on the mix.
Yeah.
There are those who also believe that people like Alero are too old to donate blood.
Auntie Alero, she looks like a 50-year-old person to me. Auntie Alero, are you older than that? She's not too old to donate blood.
The matter of my age is not for national television. Thank you very much.
Well, I know we celebrated her 20th birthday just a few days ago. So, yes, that's also true. That older
there's a
people
age limit to donate blood. So if you are donating red cells or old blood donations, you can't donate blood after the age of 65 years old.
Okay, now, I don't get this. Wait a minute.
You're beautiful, Auntie Alero.
Whole blood cell, I don't understand. It's blood.
Okay, blood is blood, yes. So we have different type of blood donations. Blood donations can be classified based on the act itself or based on what you're collecting from that person. So based on what you're collecting, the usual blood donation that a whole blood, the full blood is collected, is called whole blood, everything together. So when you go to any of the blood donation clinics and we bring out that special bag that has a bit of fluid in it, what we collect is whole blood. Okay. But now that there's a lot of technology in place in collecting of blood, we have machines called the apheresis system that can collect the exact type of blood you need. We want. So you can collect just
part of the blood.
Yes, the exact one that you need. So you can just collect something called platelets, just platelets alone. And we have a lot of people using apheresis platelets. So you can collect just plasma. For example, during the COVID-19 period, we're collecting plasma from recovered people to help to treat other people. Or you can collect just the red cells and return the other parts into you. So that is based on blood donation on the type or the part of the blood that's needed.
So now you know.
Wahala yazo.
So your blood has different parts.
You're still going to ensure that people donate blood. You're always scared of. Every time I come here, when it comes to blood,
I used to donate blood.
Yes, you always say so.
I used to donate blood.
And then?
Well, and then I got over the hill and I couldn't donate anymore.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah,
we'll come to that one.
Yeah.
What does what I eat have to do with, donating blood? There are those who think if you're a vegetarian or you're a vegan, you can't donate blood.
That's not true. That's a big myth. We have vegans outside the country that donate blood.
Okay.
We don't have a lot of vegetarians in Nigeria. I've only seen one vegetarian in Nigeria, and I'm like, how do you do it? Just one vegetarian in Nigeria. So it doesn't matter.
They will come for you because I'm sure they have an association.
Then they should come for my mom to meet them. Really, they might probably make me become a vegetarian. It's a beautiful thing. When you take, yes, it's beautiful. They are usually very healthy sets of people. So it doesn't matter what type of diet you eat. Most important thing is that you eat right. You eat a balanced diet that has a lot of iron because you need iron for your blood cells to develop well. So iron is a major part of that red thing called hemoglobin. That red part called heme. There's a lot of iron needed for it to develop.
How about tattoos?
That is a beautiful one because now we have a lot of youths coming in. Please, I'm telling everybody, tattoos are not a complete contraindication to donate blood. But we wait for 1 year after the tattoo before we collect it. So there's a timeline following tattoos, not just tattoos, piercings, scarification marks, anything that involves the use of sharp objects. We usually wait until a year after that procedure has been done before we collect that blood.
So what are they? Okay.
If you have done some tattoo or ear piercing, you can come 1 year after.
Yes, please.
What have tattoos got to do with donating blood?
So
it's on my skin. The blood you want is inside my body.
So we're using sharp objects to put in that ink into your skin.
Yes.
So because sharp objects generally there's a tendency for you to transfer infections.
But you will check the blood before you take it.
No, all the same. There's also something called a window period. So depending on the method you are using to check for infectious diseases, there's a period called the window period that we might not be able to discover. So based on that, we rather wait. We don't want any mistaken blood given into anybody. So we have to wait for a while to be sure that there is no infectious agent in that person, even though we checked. So 1 year after, that is our policy in Lagos State. In other countries, they have reduced this to 6 months after. And even in some very well-developed countries, they'll tell you because we do very, very technical and molecular testing before we transfuse blood. It doesn't matter. You don't need to wait. Immediately you do your tattoo, we will check and collect the blood. So it depends on the type of equipment you have to check the blood for infectious agent. But because of us in Nigeria, we wait for 1 year before we collect that blood.
Okay, let me ask this one. There's so many questions to ask you on this particular thing. For instance, and if you can do this in about 45 seconds, what do I do before I come donate blood? How long does it take? And what do I do after?
Present, past, future. What do I do before I collect?
Yes.
Rest well, eat a healthy diet, and take a lot of fluids. So you know you're going to donate blood tomorrow, just take enough fluids, because the more the fluids, it's easier. It makes the blood less viscous. It helps your vessels become more prominent too. And when you rest, you are more relaxed to collect blood. At the time you want to donate blood, you would have filled those questions. We have to check you first. We will definitely check you up. Just feel relaxed, lie down. Put your mind at rest to collect the blood. After collecting the blood, we encourage you to take a lot of fluid. Some people like to take water while donating blood. I encourage it because it also helps you to be relaxed. It also helps you to communicate with people while you are taking the water. We don't want you to donate blood and you're off. Anything could have happened. So we encourage you to take fluids even while or after. Merely the donation is done, we will keep you at the blood donation center for about 10 to 15 minutes. First of all, to rest. Number 2, to monitor you. There's something called a vasovagal reaction, especially for first-time donors. That means you've donated blood, you're fine. All of a sudden, you might feel dizzy. It's just a reaction because you're doing something you've not done before. So we monitor you, watch you, and thereafter you can go. When you go, please, no strenuous activities. Just relax, do your normal activities. If you work in the office, beautiful, doesn't stop you from donating blood.
And how long does all of that take?
To donate blood?
Yes.
The act of donating blood, from the time the needle gets into the skin to when the blood bag is filled, is about 3 to 5 minutes.
So in all, I have to spend how many minutes with you?
Well, in all, we want to see your face. If you are coming, we'll spend like 1 whole day.
15, 20 minutes?
Yes, about 30 minutes. From the time because you have to fill the form. Now that we are beginning to have electronic documentation, if you fill the form before coming in, or if you've come to your facility to drop those forms before coming in, it shortens it to about 15 minutes.
Okay. Has there been any occasion where, someone donates blood and then there's a complication afterwards?
Yes, there are. So there are some post-donation reactions, which is really common in first-time donors or in females, especially first-time female donors. So females have a smaller body volume. So if they are not well monitored, it's possible that they feel dizzy, what I call the vasovagal reaction. And then for first-time donors too, then people have a lot of anxiety. So once you notice that there's a bit of anxiety, we just tell you to calm down because there's a higher incidence of that vasovagal reaction following anxiety. So usually that's the commonest type of reactions.
Well, we have just about 60 seconds, but let me just ask you this. For those, particularly in Nigeria, who want to, I know that your own blood transfusion, whatever, in Lagos is about 20 years old now.
Yes, but we are 20 years today. Happy birthday to us.
How many such are there all over Nigeria, blood transfusion services?
So, well, what I can say is that we have a National Blood Service Commission that coordinates everyone. And the National Blood Service Commission has encouraged every state to have their own state blood services because it's easier for the state blood services to help to run those activities. Well, that is all I can say.
That's all that you know. Because I don't know. I know about Lagos State Blood Transfusion, whatever it is you guys call it. And I know that there's a National Blood Transfusion Commission that you got. I have not heard of
Blood Service Commission.
Commission is like a regulatory agency.
That's what she said, though.
That's why it says. So all states are encouraged to
we
have
don't
this.
have one in Bauchi, in Kaduna, in Zaria. I don't know. I'm just
We have
asking.
to call them from those states to come and talk here
Oh,
to tell us if they have
All
or not.
Thank you so much for your time this morning, Dr. Bodun Oshikumaya, Executive Secretary, Lagos State Blood Transfusion Committee, as well as a hematologist. Thank you again.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. You have been told to go and donate blood. So please go
Save a life. Donate blood.
and be a voluntary donor. I mean, not be so that they talk. Because some people actually paid. We will be right back while we continue our own gist.
Thank you for staying with us. We're almost there, but this I find very, very interesting. We have a lady in the studio.
Who works in the studio?
In a different kind of studio.
Well, studio is studio to them.
Dolapo Adigun. She, you know that trailer we just saw? That movie is called Criminal. She directed that. She acted in it.
No,
And she's also a post-production supervisor and lead editor at Ant Hill Studios. I don't know why, but we always thought that these things were done by men. Post-production.
Only because you're in Nigeria.
You know that we're a bit one kind.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dolapo, for coming.
Oh, by the way, she also said that she edited Jagun Jagun, that Femi Adebayo movie.
Oh, yes. Is that the one where we saw the horses the other day?
yes.
Did it have horses in it?
Yeah, lots,
okay.
lots of
That's the
horses.
one. So
Yes.
I know it's there, even though I
actually-
haven't seen it.
I'd put that movie, I've seen the movie, I've put that movie in the category of Hercules and Spartacus. Yes.
And it
Without
was
the,
edited by a woman.
Yes.
and without all of the
Drum roll. Drum roll.
without all the age behind Spartacus. And thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so
First
much.
of all, what drove you into? Because something must have driven you.
That area. There are more men in that area, right?
In editing?
Yes.
Yeah, there are lots of men and women as well. Yes. I think a lot of people assume
Do the
that.
numbers compare?
Okay, maybe
Evenly?
there are more men. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I mean, what drove you there?
I knew I've always been a storyteller. I grew up being one of those kids that wrote stories like, Mommy, can you publish this? Daddy, can you publish this? Wrote poems and all of that. So I've always liked the idea of storytelling. And then I think I watched the Oscars for the first time and I'm like, interesting. I would love to create and be a part of this someday. And then after my master's degree, I wanted to just delve fully into filmmaking. So I started learning things that will help me. I attended Nia Kimolayo's free training for women. He organizes free training for women who wants to learn editing to even the number. And then I attended that, and then I later got hired by him, and the rest is history.
Well, first of all,
what did you study?
Wait. Ni, that is gender
Parity.
No, English.
Oh, English.
Race, gender discrimination.
Discrimination?
Yes.
He accepted. Oh, for women.
Yes.
Oh,
Well, you did say
that's
there
where
were
you're going.
there were more men. So
You
now we
people
have to
are-
get
you are-
more women.
Even here, I'm overpopulated. Sorry. I'm out. What's that word?
Are you a country? You're overpopulated.
Even my producer is a woman. I'm right now protesting. The only person on my side here is my director. Anyway, you're all forgiven. You're all forgiven. So, well,
What did you study?
I studied English for BA and then media studies for MA.
And then you went to
Filmmaking.
filmmaking.
Yes.
Okay. It's allowed.
how does it feel? I love watching out not just for the movies, but for the details. And the details is the job of the editor, right? To ensure that, okay, the cue, for instance, the ones that I even pity the most are the action movies, which Criminal is, right?
Yes.
So you have to say, stand by, and then you are like that, and then you get moving.
Yeah.
How does it feel putting the stories together when you know that you are cutting out so many things? When people give you reactions of, okay, this is how I feel about this, how does it feel bringing the magic together?
I think the magic starts at pre-production. When you get your script, then you decide how you want to tell the story. Do you want to get a stunt coordinator? Because if you don't shoot it right, the editor cannot edit it right. So you shoot it, and all of it is fake. Nobody is punching anybody on set. So you have to get like the appropriate angles to sell it. And when you do that, then it's left to the editor to...
So how do people get wounded? Get a black eye on set when it's off?
So there are some that...
Effects.
Yes, there's SFX. There's somebody holding the blood right there on set. Like, when it's time to plot the blood, and they do that. And it looks magical and real.
So all the blood in the ground is fake?
Yeah.
Jesus. Well, I can't wait to see this. Tell us about Criminal.
Criminal is a film that Mr. Nee wrote. He got an inspiration from it when he was actually waiting. He has just heard a bad news about a family member, and he was at the reception and he was like, wait a minute. What if somebody comes here and takes this hospital hostage? It's very weird, but that's what happened to him. So he wrote it, and he has just finished a director's training with me and a couple of other people, training us to become the next Nollywood directors. And then he offered the script to me. Dolapo, you are directing the next Antio film. I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. And then it's about a guy that the hospital refuses to treat his brother because they had other patients at the time who had just gotten into an accident. So he takes the hospital hostage. You have to treat my brother before anybody else. And it's really crazy.
Wow.
So
what a storyline.
Yes.
It is a crazy one. And I've seen something close. I'm trying to remember the title of the movie now. I think that had something to do with COVID.
COVID. Oh, is it a Nigerian film?
Yes.
Is it Lockdown?
Lockdown.
Yes,
That's it. Something similar to that. Forgive me, I look out for lessons. Is it to tell hospitals that, look, you guys need to begin to take certain preemptive measures to ensure that certain things don't happen?
Yeah, there are so many takeaways from this movie. There is, even on the part of Uzo, which is played by Uzo Arukwe, who plays the lead character, there is the don't use brute force to try to get what you want. But then there is the also, maybe use brute force because his brother would have died if he didn't. But then on the part of the doctor, there is I think there's a way the hospital could have protected themselves better. Get more security, get the police on time. Then there is, the doctor didn't want to be bullied in our own hospital. Maybe there was a time that she could have let down and go like, okay, this is what you want, this is how. Because they did kill like 2 people in the hospital trying to get this brother treated. So there are so many takeaways from the movie, depending on the part you are looking at it from. Yeah.
Interesting. This actually brings me to the fact that in most cases, excuse me, when we talk about movie classification in Nigeria, it's all largely drama. This looks more like action.
It's an action thriller, yes.
Okay.
It's an action thriller. It's medical. We did a lot of surgeries. We did a CS. And a lot of people have come up to me and said that looks real. Because our SFX person, Udu, did an amazing job. We had like a prosthetic baby pulled out from the belly of a fake pregnancy. It's just, we went all out for this movie and it's really beautiful.
Okay. I am looking forward to seeing it, but please don't give me any more spoilers. So
okay.
So, now, in the space, Alero began by saying something about the fact that women aren't so many in this field. You have gotten out, decided to go into this, taking all the training that is necessary and all.
Yes.
So tell us about entry-level qualifications for many you have seen. If we would class, because I watch a lot of movies, if we would class, I wouldn't want to watch any movie less than 4.9, in rating.
Yeah.
But we have quite a load of 2.1s in Nigeria, in my opinion. It is my opinion. So, and some of them still find their ways into cinemas.
Yes.
So there are movies that shouldn't have been made. There are those that are made and still just clog the whole space. So talk to us, what would you recommend as the best entry level for anyone who is going into filmmaking?
I believe that first you need to recognize the area that you want to. A lot of people start out like, okay, let me try this, let me try this, let me try this. Eventually, we have people who are not good at, who are midway in a lot of things. So maybe recognize what you want to do in the film, recognize all the places, all the departments in the filmmaking industry, recognize the part that will best suit you, and then be proficient in that part. And you can start out by learning your way up. There's no role that is too small. Start from like production assistants, for instance. The production assistant are people that help out with picking stuff around on set. Start out with that. There are a lot of people that started that way. My friends that are now first ADs, directors in the film industry. I started as a DIT on set. And then first AD, second AD, I did all of that. And now we're here. So don't just start out and go like, Nollywood is bad, I just want to fix it. Learn the ropes. Start from the ground up. I think that's a way I would recommend.
Is Nollywood bad?
Nollywood is not bad.
Okay. What needs fixing?
Is Nollywood growing?
Nollywood is growing, yes.
What are the things that we need to grow out of, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I believe that a lot of people need to do more on pre-production. A lot of people just get scripts and they go like, okay, this is good to go. Let's shoot it. I believe that if you do write a script, let a lot of people read it, a lot of industry professionals, and they go like, this is good to go. And then you do proper pre-production. How do you want to do this? How do we make this happen the best way possible? And then before you go and start saying, let's shoot. Don't just get a script and start shooting. Do proper process of pre-production, recce, the best location for you, and all of that, yes.
What movie have you watched? Not yours, Nigerian, whatever. You may not mention the name of the movie.
Okay.
And you say, oh gosh, what kind of foolish error is this? Especially in your own space.
You want me to mention the...
I didn't say mention.
Okay.
It's not me.
So what's your question if I can't mention?
Okay. Because, you know, sometimes we watch movies and it's 1928 and somebody has a lipstick on. Is that something you use VFX to put on?
No.
Okay, so that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. What are some of those things that you have seen that you say, look, no, this is not representative?
Some of the flaws.
Yeah.
Some of the flaws, I think, would, as they said, include some VFX. There are some VFX mistakes that we shouldn't be making anymore. There are like people that shoot on green screen, and when they clean the green screen, you can still tell that this was done on green screen. This is not well clean. There are some gunshots that are like, that's too fake. Nobody believes that, and so many other things like that. Yeah.
So how about you shoot somebody? You shot me.
Yes.
I'm dying.
Yes.
I'm dying.
No, that's more Indian though. That's more Indian.
we don't do those kind of
No,
movies.
that's Indian. Somebody will get shot in an Indian film and they will still run like, I
Wait,
need to save.
You guys don't know what I'm talking about? I have seen transcription. I am dead.
Yes.
And the person is...
I am dead. Dead men don't talk.
Yes.
But you see, I am dead. You know? So that's what I'm talking about. That's just on the funny side. Now...
I mean, that is so ridiculous. Because somebody shot it, somebody edited, some people have viewed before it is put to the public, and they didn't see all that.
Why do you think I'm talking about 2.0 or 2.1 or 1.9 movie ratings? Anyway.
Even us who are not in that post-production space can see these things and know that these things should not happen.
One of the things that interests me is, I mean, you're a storyteller.
Yes, sir.
How much of Nigeria's story do you think yet needs to be told that have not been told? Are we doing well enough in that regard?
I mean, I'll give props to Nollywood in the past 2 to 3 years. It's been amazing, the amount of content and the quality of content we are churning out right now. And there is a lot of Nigerian stories that still needs to be told. Look at the Formula one that you mentioned. I didn't know that she fought for women like that. I just know that I knew that she
was the first woman to drive a car.
Yes, and there's so many Nigerian stories that still needs to be told. And even now, there's so many stories around us that you can draw. I told you this story, Mr. Nee had the inspiration from it, from being in a hospital reception. There's so many amazing stories around us. And this story made it very Nigerian. It's not like it's not just copying Hollywood and putting it out there and people can relate. This is a story that you can relate, like, what if I was on hostage? What if I am the doctor? What if I am the brother? What if I am the criminal? What would I have done? So there's so many stories around us, and we have to find the most creative ways to Nigerianize it.
And that's one of the challenges that I have.
Yeah.
I saw a Babangida movie. Beautiful story. But I could see extreme caution in trying to make the film look in a particular way. So sometimes it's in the authenticity of it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So how do we tell it in a way that it's authentic and acceptable, particularly to the young people?
Yeah. I think it still stems to let these stories be relatable. Let an average Nigerian feel a sense of connection to it. Tell the story from script level. It doesn't just start from where you're shooting or where you're editing. From script level, let the characters talk like a Nigerian. Let the accent show it. Let the level of education, yes. Let the level of education show in the script. And then when you are shooting, use very relatable locations. And then when you put the film out there, sell it to average Nigerians.
Okay.
Yes.
We could go on and on.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
Dolapo Adigun, director, post-production, editor.
Do you act?
No.
Okay, sorry. Just wanted to...
But I saw you in that movie.
That was the behind the scenes of me directing.
Oh, that was behind. Okay.
Yes.
All right then.
With very long Indian hair. So you were saying something?
Dolapo Adigun, again, director, post-production, editor, and there was a third thing.
Post-production supervisor and editor.
Supervisor and editor. Thank you very much for coming on Sunrise this morning and closing our program with us. We wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And we hope to see more movies directed by you, directed by many more women.
Criminal is out when?
It came out yesterday.
Oh,
so
it's in cinemas already?
Yes.
Grab your copy.
In cinemas near you?
Grab your copy. Now! You don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. By the way, I went to see Olufemi Layora and
we'll talk about that next week. We have
and it was
mind-blowing. I know. Don't rub it in yet.
And like most people, most people just think about her as the first woman to drive a car in Nigeria. But there's plenty more to that woman than that, I promise you. And that is how we end Sunrise for today. My name is Alero Edu, wishing you all the best through the weekend and through the month of June.
Amayo Makinde, do have a beautiful rest of your weekend.
Bye-bye.